wheelchair fighting man here. I got this blackjack image up because I'm looking at cash in combat sports, and whether that, looking at that and saying, well, is this taking the game? Should it be treated differently? Should it not be? You've got a lot of boxers now that are sort of looking at the clock and going and using it as boxing is a business. It's been a business as long as I can remember, except it used to bring a lot more status with it if you were a world champion. But a lot of guys were famous for going broke because they weren't the most, you don't have to be intelligent to be a boxer, but yeah, they weren't the most frugal guys in the entire world. That being said, I do sort of think that, promoters at least, or the contracts that are drawn up, at least for some of these boxers, MMAs and wrestling guys, should, at least come with, look, we're going to give you a wage that after tax, we're going to pay your tax, because if they're putting their lives on the line, at least do that for them, so that the money they got is theirs, at least. Because I think when they're looking at, I've got this big fight ahead of me, I might make X amount, and then there's all the stipulations in the contracts of making weight and doing so many media appearances, doing this, doing that, and selling so many tickets. It's, and then you're risking your health. Whatever you do, whether you do boxing, you're definitely risking your health. You could die. MMA, you could die. Wrestling, believe it or not, you could die. Pro wrestling, you could die. 20% of the moves go wrong in that ring. You're doing that 12 months a year, 6 days a week. So it's not like boxing where, there's a 12-week training camp. Not saying that boxing is not that. It's the toughest sport that there is. MMA is tough. But the fact is at the end of the day, the more you do something, the more prone you are to getting injured. So guys want to get in, they want to take their money and run, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. I think every industry is now guilty of this, every job is guilty of this, but I think, at least when Eddie Hearn is interviewed by O4 TV, he'll lay it on the line and say, here's our deal with Sky. But I do think that one thing promoters owe their clients is to say, look, okay, we're going to do the tax on this and give, your money is your money, because they end up falling in with a tax man like Joe Lewis did. And I kind of just feel that, if you're putting your life on the line in that way, and I think this is the same thing. You look at the military, someone goes into the military, they face getting a bullet, they get paid a lot less, but they're not paying tax. They're getting paid after tax. And I just think, yes, they're independent contractors, all the rest of it, but you need to look after your golden gooses. Now, of course, you don't want someone to fight on until there's nothing left. It's up to them. Glory or money, tough decision to go for. And in the end, you've got to question why you're doing it. Now, you look at something like boxing, you've got to question, most biggest question in sport, in boxing at the moment, is what is Tony Bellew going to do? If he fights Joseph Parker, say he beats Joseph Parker, retires, brilliant end of the story. But if he retires now, brilliant end. David Haye, I think, to be honest, his career is at an end. But what a career to have had. We've seen too many fighters go on for too long because of the tax man, because of the cash involved, because they've dealt with the wrong promoters. Don King, yeah, he's made a lot of boxers millionaires, but he's also ripped a lot of them off. And you could say that about every single promoter in the game. The worst one, though, I'd say even worse than all of them, is Dana White in the MMA. I really have a problem with Dana White. It's not so much the MMA I have a problem with, or the UFC I have a problem with. It's Dana White, because Conor McGregor has got himself to a position now where, he's created history. He's the biggest name, I think, ever in UFC. And you look at, MMA and UFC before that, his predecessors like Kimbo Slice. Kimbo Slice should have been the Tyson and whatever, a couple of other guys that were in there. should have been treated like gods amongst men in terms of the money they were given, and they carried on too long. Obviously, they like to fight, or they seem to carry that persona, but you never know. And for me, Kimbo Slice could just walk into somewhere, pretty much similar to Hulk Hogan walking into a wrestling promotion now, not doing anything, and people would show up to see him. Same thing with Tyson, and saying same thing with the truly great powerhouse boxers, the truly great boxers. You show up because they are there. They put up a certain amount of bums on seats. Dana White with Conor McGregor has just said, I want to work with you. I want a piece of the pie. I want a piece of what you've got, because why shouldn't I? I've worked hard for it in the ring. I've done it in the ring. I could be an asset to you. I mean, this is what I'm hearing. I can be an asset to you. I've been a fighter. I know how to speak to fighters. I know how fighters think. And I could be an asset, and I could change the way the company works. The reason Dana White doesn't want that is because the more security his UFC fighters get, the more chance they won't want to fight. And at the moment, there isn't really. Okay, I could name Nate Diaz, and I can name Ronda Rousey, and I can name Conor McGregor, but only because Nate Diaz fought Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey has got such a high media profile. I think that also, you look at the world of wrestling, it's like, if someone is selling 50,000 tickets or they're selling 30,000 tickets, they need to be taken care of in a certain way. But wrestling promoters know the risks that their guys are taking. 20% of their moves go wrong in the ring. They do that 6 days a week, 12 months a year. That's a lot of risk of injury, and that's why a lot of these guys end up really hurt, screwed up, damaged mentally, emotionally, but they are self-employed just like the boxers. But the thing is, the big difference is that if they're at a company, they get paid sort of almost what they're worth. And I think in boxing, even on the lower levels, when you've got guys like Josh Warrington selling out places because of their names, and I don't know how much Kevin Dodd gets paid, but Masha Dodd, Sean Dodd, he sold probably a quarter of the seats there. Now, I'm not saying that Eddie didn't give him his money. I don't know. That's between him and Eddie. But I do feel the same thing. The fact is that WWE, where it's falling down, where the wrestling world is falling down, is all these people are independent contractors. So they got to pay for their food, they got to pay for their travel, and they got to travel, like I said, 6 days a week, different house shows here, there, everywhere, and there's no accounting for that. And wrestling has sort of been the example where if you are the big box office attraction, then nothing is too much trouble. And actually, we've got to keep you kind of in that status, like Ric Flair's and your Dusty Rhodes, your Hulk Hogan's. You got to keep them almost at a level where, money is not an object, because the marketability, the T-shirts they can sell, all these things, let alone your Mick Foley's, people like that. But you look at the injuries that they sustain in the ring, and you can say, actually, to some degree, it's especially now, since Stone Cold Steve Austin's been involved, with wrestling, and since Brock Lesnar's been involved, crossing over from MMA, that these guys' injuries are actually, it's worth the risk for the potential reward. But is it worth risking your life for? That's the question. All I'm saying is should tax be paid before fighters receive their wages? First, and it's not a worry, I think we might get better performances.